So they're going places. Good to hear, Simon. Mr. Ashton, you've been working constantly, and you were at the Etihad, right?
I was. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was chastening for Chelsea in that first half. That was a real going over. It was a bit embarrassing, if I'm honest, that first half for Chelsea and Graham Potter. So, yeah, it was great to be up there and watch that. City were terrific, by the way. We'll take nothing away from them. They were, that third goal was just sensational.
Yeah. Now, one wonders, I mentioned it with Laura and Ali. I was on with them very briefly before I came on with you guys. You and I were in Qatar. You and I met Todd Bowley.
Yeah.
You're very good at summing up somebody right away, Simon. You're a very good judge of character. Have you any way you could second guess where his mindset will be at the moment, regards Potter, regards what's going on at Chelsea?
Well, look, I mean, the idea that the Chelsea fans are singing for Thomas Tuchel and using that as some sort of undermining of Graham Potter, that's what football fans do every now and again. I don't get the impression, and neither should Todd Bowley be looking at it down the pike of what's happening at this moment in time. We are living in a narrative of what Chelsea have been since 2003, 2004, which is bang, turn the lights on or get out and we'll turn them off for you as a manager, in terms of Abramovich's position with managers not achieving things in the short term. You know, he took a big step. And there's a lot more behind the scenes of Tuchel that would make most people's eyes water as to the reasons why Todd Bowley made that decision. And it wasn't just a case of losing to Dynamo Zagreb. It was a case of a whole raft of other things. That's Todd Bowley's gift to tell people what that is. But it opened my eyes, and I'd have done exactly the same thing as Todd Bowley did, which is you can go, mate. Now, he's alighted upon Potter. And Potter's got to find his head. He's got to get himself together, because like Danny Murphy said, and I think even Dina said this, about the changing of formation, the not being able to settle upon a settled way of playing. But then again, if you've got a lot of players out, then you are going to have that challenge. But notwithstanding that, I thought Chelsea were okay in the first half in the league game against Man City, but obviously on the weekend they've got their heads handed to them. I think you have to look at what Chelsea are doing. It wasn't so long ago that we were going, what a result against RB Salzburg that was.
Yeah.
To go there and beat them at Salzburg.
Yeah.
I think Potter will be okay. I don't think he's going to be the holy grail for them. I do understand why they brought him in, because of what he's done prima facie at Brighton and how he's kept on moving through the gears. I do think Potter will come up short, but I don't think it's time for them to be making changes now.
Makes me think when we talked to you about Ten Hag early on, so does Potter's suit fit?
Well, that anecdote that I used was about presentation. It was about a person that looked to me like he was shrinking in front of the cameras rather than pushing his chest out. And, you know, and we can make fun of that analogy, but the same thing with Potter. There is language that Potter's using which isn't the language of an elite manager at times. That does look like he's a little bit caught in the headlights. But I think that he's got the character. I think he's shown that he's got the character. Now, I know it's a vast step to go from Östersund to Swansea to Brighton and then into Chelsea. But I think what Chelsea will do is they'll assess it over the course of this season. They've got a lot of dough invested in this fella. They've spent £20 million to get him out of Brighton.
Yeah.
They've spent a lot of money bringing in the backroom staff that he wanted, whether it's a director of football. You know, whether people like Cucurella are good signings and whether Todd Bowley had his pants pulled down by people at 60 million quid, they're different discussions. But I think you've got to let this guy have some rope to either run with or...
Well, you were there, Dean.
I think he looks in his interviews. I mean, he's already, and he's got to be careful. I think he's already sort of had a little bite at the media, hasn't he, about saying that I'm having to answer some stupid questions and these sorts of things. And I think it's probably bothered him that, you know, I know people are saying, well, they've lost 6 of their last 8, I think it is, or 9. But if you look at those, those
are better sides right now.
Arsenal at home can. They were absolutely flying.
Newcastle were flying.
3 times you play Manchester City twice away. Yeah. Newcastle away is going to be a tough. Brighton's the one.
It's Brighton getting a chastening. It's against Brentford where they drew, and it's other games where you would, and Villa that have beaten them.
I think add to the injury list that he's got. I think it's probably even surprised him how much pressure and how much focus has been put on him personally. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done. But I think probably just if you look at all of those aspects and. Albeit you watched that first half yesterday and you say, well, that's not good enough, regardless of who's out. With the players you put out there should be better than that.
Yeah.
But I think he's probably a bit like, I've come into this job, I've had those fixtures, and I've got this injury list where you've got, for me, 2 of the best fullbacks in world football, and arguably, before his injuries, the best defensive midfielder in the world in Kante out.
Yeah.
Any team would struggle with those type of injuries as Liverpool showed when they had.
But they're still
their
good.
injuries.
I mean, their starting 11 yesterday was still good enough to do a little bit better than they did against.
Especially the senior players.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Dean, he went into yesterday's match with just 6 points from 24, 10th in the Premier League. Anyway, this was Potter on where it's going wrong at this time.
The results in terms of in a small space of time aren't positive. I've said before, you can make excuses and look for reasons, or you can say it isn't good enough, and both of those answers are correct. So we have to keep improving, stick together, because clearly we're suffering as a football club and it's not nice at all, but that's where we're at the moment. That's where we are at the moment.
So, Dean, do you think a certain number of Chelsea fans screaming for Tuchel are becoming a bit hysterical right now?
I just think that is... I think that is just some supporters. I think that's what they're like, and they can change very quickly. I think if Potter was be able to get results, they would change that opinion very quickly. I look at what he did at Brighton, and I look at before he left the sort of stats that he was producing.
Yeah,
he was only really behind Liverpool and City and maybe Leeds in terms of intensity out of possession. He was only probably behind City and Liverpool in terms of possession for a team like Brighton. I think he needs to be given time for himself to adjust to new expectations, totally different to what he had at Brighton, and let him get some of these injuries back and maybe some of his own players, and then I think we'll start to see the real Graeme. I want him to do well, and I think he will do well.
So do I. I mean, you want English managers to prosper, and you want to see them managing the elite sides, and you want to put that well-trodden narrative of people like Harry Redknapp. It's only foreign managers. If it was Eddie Howe, he'd get a top. If it was called Eduardo Suarez, he'd have got a top job. And that sort of narrative that English managers want to put out there.
How hard is it as an owner when you look at your side and they're 10th? You've got Fulham.
Depends how big your balls are, and depends how much you believe in your fella. If you sit there and say, well, I've made this decision and I know what I've made the decision for, and I'm not going to deal with it in the short term, and I don't care about the background noise, and I don't care who ridicules me and tells me that I wanted an all-star game. I know what I've put in place. I know why I put them in place. So you're just going to have to wait with it. I think Bowley will be that way.
I've already heard people saying he's out of his depth and they should get rid of him now and those sorts of things. If you're an owner, how hard is that to, or is it not?
No, it depends. Well, look, if you're a new owner, everybody has a learning curve, and you learn with your chin and your checkbook sometimes, and people take liberties with you, and then you square that circle relatively quickly.
They get to you eventually, don't they?
Well, no.
The screams of the fans?
Not really. What gets to you is the evidence of your own eyes. You can see it for yourself. You don't need to go to training grounds to see what they're talking about on a Saturday during the week. You can see it on a Saturday afternoon. You don't need to listen to the media, and they know nothing nonsense at times. You need to look at what's in front of you and what's coming behind that and the reasons behind it, and you assess it for yourself. Now, Bowley is nobody's fool. He's absolutely nobody's fool.
No.
And of course, he will have made this appointment, and there's an element of, well, will he want to stick with it because he's made it? No, I think he'll be brutal if he doesn't think it's going the right way. But right now, it is far too early to assess it, and I think they'll give him until the end of the season. And if he stinks the place out and Chelsea finished 10th after 38 games and not 19, then I think you'll have some different conversations starting to reverberate.
Next up,
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.